What's up guys, my name is Ace, and this morning we got a surprise update for Warzone, and with this we saw some of the weapon balancing that was teased last week, and this was some nerfs to the AMAX, the Bullfrog, as well as a lot of the stock attachments for Cold War weapons. So in today's video, we're going to be covering all of those details and seeing just how much they changed these guns. Now, I know a lot of you guys were expecting a FARA 83 gun guide for Cold War multiplayer today. I decided to push that till tomorrow because this video is just much more time sensitive. So let's just hop right into the changes here, and the first gun that was nerfed is the CR56 AMAX, and with this, they barely touched it. Now, in its maximum damage range, so up close, they didn't change anything with the AMAX. It performs exactly the same as it did pre-patch, which is great news. They only adjusted this for longer ranges, beyond 24 meters, if you're not using any attachments. And with this, what they did is they just changed the base damage from 32 down to 31, and this also changes our upper torso damage from 38 down to 37. Now what this means is if we're hitting every shot to the upper torso, this actually doesn't make a difference at all, but that's not super realistic. Instead, the best way to look at this is if the enemy has 3 armor plates and you're within its minimum damage range, pre-patch you had to hit 5 out of your 7 shots to the upper torso if you wanted to get a 7-shot kill, otherwise it would take you at least 8 shots to kill. Whereas post-patch, it's not quite as forgiving. You have to hit 6 out of your 7 shots to the upper torso, and if you hit any more than 1 shot to anywhere else aside from the upper torso, like the arm or the stomach or the leg, now it's going to take you at least 8 shots to kill. Now, realistically speaking, at longer ranges, it's not like you were hitting 5 out of 7 shots to the upper torso really consistently anyways, so at the end of the day, I don't really think this changes the effectiveness of the AMAX all that much. It just slightly reduces its potential at longer ranges, and I'm totally fine with this. I was worried they were going to nerf this thing into the ground, and this was just a very minor tweak. But next up we have the FARA 83, and with this one, they adjusted our headshot multiplier from 1.5 down to 1.35, and this means our previous headshot profile was 46 to 39, and now it's 42 to 35. The strangest part about this is it doesn't actually change the effectiveness of the FARA 83. Against an enemy that has 3 armor plates, up close, it's still only going to take you 1 headshot mixed in with body shots to reduce the number of shots to kill. And at longer ranges, it's still going to take you 2 headshots mixed in with body shots to reduce the number of shots to kill. So yeah, really not much of a difference here whatsoever with this headshot damage change. Headshots are still very effective with this gun. But another thing they did is they nerfed its aim down sight movement speed, and they also nerfed basically all of the Cold War stocks that impact your aim walking movement speed and your firing movement speed. So your movement speed while you're firing your gun. And I thought I'd just sort of cover that all together here. But when it comes to our base ADS movement speed for the FARA 83 specifically, pre-patch our aim down sight movement speed was 2.54 meters per second, and post-patch it's 2.31 meters per second. So this was a fairly minor change, but it is noticeable. Then, when it comes to the Raider pad as well as the KGB skeletal stock, pre-patch with the FARA 83, our movement speed was 3.54 meters per second, and post-patch, it's now 3.14 meters per second. So you still get a very nice, noticeable boost with these stock attachments, but they're not going to be nearly as effective. And keep in mind, this is just one example. This applies across the board to all of these stocks. So it doesn't matter which gun you're using, you're going to be seeing the same trend when it comes to the effectiveness of the Raider pad as well as the skeletal stock, or whatever their equivalents would be. And the most noticeable part about this is your aim walking movement speed while firing your gun with Cold War assault rifles. This was a big problem pre-patch because it basically made it so that ARs were better than SMGs up close because you could strafe so fast side to side that nobody could land shots on you. And this is what it looked like pre-patch with the FARA 83 and the skeletal stock. You could bounce back and forth so quickly, and now this is what it looks like post-patch while strafing back and forth and firing your gun. This is significantly slower. You no longer get that massive acceleration when you start firing your gun. And this is really going to allow SMGs to come back out and play and dominate in close quarters. And I'm really happy to see this. This is going to encourage way more variety, and it's also going to bring out some room for modern warfare assault rifles to come back into the meta as well. But moving on to the next gun that they nerfed, this was the Street Sweeper, and what they did with this is they increased our base hipfire spread, so it's going to be less effective for landing as many pellets as possible on target. They also increased the recoil slightly, and the aim down sight speed was reduced slightly, so they slowed that down a little bit. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have any pre-patch testing to compare this side by side to. Just know they made the Street Sweeper overall a little bit less effective. But more importantly, what they did here is they removed the Street Sweeper from ground loot and replaced it with the Howler 77. And this was an awesome move. They listened to the community here. That Street Sweeper as ground loot was really frustrating. And it's not necessarily that the gun itself was bad. It's just the fact that it was ground loot and it was so prevalent early game. And there was very little you could do to counter it early game. So good on Raven for listening to the community here and swapping it with the Howler 77, which is not nearly as frustrating to run into early game. But next up, moving on to the SMGs, the Bullfrog got a noticeable nerf here, and the first thing they did is they changed the maximum damage to the torso from 34 down to 32. Now this doesn't change the number of shots to kill to the body at all, so that's fine, this is still going to be just as effective. But what this does is it effectively makes our headshots less valuable. Pre-patch, in the maximum damage range, we only needed one single headshot mixed in with torso shots to reduce the number of shots to kill, which would give us an incredibly fast time to kill, one of the fastest in the game. And keep in mind, this SMG is very accurate as well. Post-patch, with that slight torso reduction, it now takes 2 headshots mixed in with torso shots to get that really fast time to kill. So it's still possible to get an incredible time to kill, but you're just not going to be able to do it as consistently, and this was the perfect change to the Bullfrog. This is exactly what I was hoping they would do, and I'm very happy with that. Now that's not all they did to the Bullfrog. It wasn't just a straight up nerf, they also buffed some of its stats. So its maximum damage range was increased by 11%, so it went from about 14 meters up to about 15 to 15.5 meters. A very minor change there, hardly even noticeable. But they also improved the base movement speed. They increased this by 1%, and 1% is noticeable when it comes to movement speed. And then finally, they improved our sprint out speed by 13%. So even though we did get a nerf to its headshot effectiveness, we got some buffs in some other areas, and overall this is more of a rework than a nerf. But after that, we got some buffs to the PPSH. With this, they increased its maximum damage range by only 4%, so this goes from 15 meters up to around 16 meters. Again, this isn't really a super noticeable change here, but a really noticeable change is they significantly reduced the open bolt delay. So when you first pull the trigger on the PPSH, pre-patch, there would be a bit of delay before the bullet actually came out of the gun, whereas post-patch, that delay is pretty much negligible now. And while I wouldn't say the PPSH is now a top tier SMG, I would say it's in a much better place and it's much more usable than it was pre-patch. And with that, that's it for things that they changed with the base weapons. Now let's move into some of the attachments here. And I already mentioned all the stock attachments, basically any stock attachment that helped with your ADS movement speed or ADS firing speed quite significantly, so they're not going to be helping you nearly as much as before. But on top of that, they mentioned with the combat recon barrel on sniper rifles, they increased the bullet velocity multiplier by 12%. Now I hopped in and just did a quick test with the Tundra using the wrap suppressor combined with the combat recon barrel, and I still got basically the same bullet velocity value, so about 1125 meters per second. So really, at least with the Tundra, it's kind of hard to see any difference here whatsoever. I honestly don't think this is going to be a game changer, at least based on what I've seen with my testing. But they also mentioned with this barrel, they decreased the idle sway multiplier by 33%. So this sounds like a buff to me. Unfortunately, I didn't have any pre-patch footage of the idle sway with this barrel specifically, because that's kind of a strange thing to be testing on its own. But yeah, it does seem like they have buffed the combat recon barrel for sniper rifles. Now, one final thing that they mentioned here in their patch notes is they improved the optic behavior of the Axial Arms 3X sight on the Cold War AK-47. And again, this is just one of those obscure things that I obviously just don't have any pre-patch footage to share with you guys. But what I think they did here is I think they just reduced the visual recoil a little bit while using the 3X sight on the AK-47. But that is just my best guess based on what we can see here. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on all of the weapon balancing change that hit Warzone today. Overall, I am super impressed with Raven so far with Season 3. It's like they're a totally different company here. They're making the right changes, the changes that actually make a difference. And not only are they finally making the right changes, they also have excellent patch notes. So whatever they change behind the scenes, I hope they keep this up because they are now doing a great job when it comes to weapon balancing and their patch notes. Of course, that is just my opinion. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what did you guys think of all these changes that they made with today's update? Are you generally happy or unhappy with these changes? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.